This program is proudly brought to you by LateNightMedia.com for all your podcasting, comedy writing, and hot steaming pod needs. LateNightMedia.com.
Conscious wisdom, challenging our skeptical, critical thinking, digging deep into the dark and the light, and exploring the depths of our mind, body, and spirit. The podcast sprinkled with science, creativity, ageless wisdom, philosophy, and conspiracy. So be part of the discussion and get involved. Be part of the action of thinking and being the revolution. Be conscious with wisdom. Conscious wisdom, challenging our skeptical, critical thinking.
Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Conscious Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host Kris Anderson, and we've got a cracker for you today. I mean, this should be fun. We've got some wonderful guests. How are you going, guys?
Well,
Great.
yeah, great.
Awesome. Okay, we've got some wonderful newcomers for you at home to check out, and today's topic is I thought polio was a sport. It's about vaccination and big pharma deception. So we're all about vaccination, anti-vax. We're gonna go delve deep right in. We'll see if Big Dick jumps in, like in wrestling style. I don't know if we're all going to create a wrestling match over this one. I've seen people talk about this topic before, and it gets quite heated. So I think we'll be fine. Let's see how we go. Now, on my left, my first wonderful guest is Stephanie Messenger. Now, Stephanie, you've been educating fellow humans for over 30 years about living as close to nature as possible, as well as a lot of your work is centered around vaccination information. And you're a co-author of Vaccination Roulette and the author of 7 children's books. And these books would be about vaccination as well, children's books?
2 of them are about,
have
vaccination content in them anyway for children, yeah.
Wonderful. So what got you into the field about educating people about vaccination?
Well, unfortunately, I had the worst possible experience in that my first child passed away from his vaccinations.
That's terrible.
That got me into looking into it and going through the experience in the hospital system where they were in denial about what happened. And years later, when I had my next child, I knew I wasn't going to be doing any vaccinations, but I was still very fearful, so I started accumulating information. This was pre-internet time too, by the way, so it was much harder to collect information, but I did. And then at one point I just started sharing it with a lot of people, and then our group grew. Vaccination Awareness and Information Service.
Okay, well, so it's fantastic that out of something so horrible you could take something from it to help people from maybe going down the road, the same sort of road that you went. Now with you also do like seminars and that sort of stuff around town?
Yeah, I do. Well, all around the country really, and New Zealand. I've travelled doing seminars, and yeah, because parents now want a lot of information. They're not just willing to go to a doctor and have the doctor do whatever they want them to do. They're hearing a lot of stories about the damage being done, so now they are looking into things a lot deeper. So I found doing seminars and taking them on the journey of not just what the vaccines are doing, but a bit of history, and then about how to keep their children healthy as well.
Okay, that's fantastic. So you provide a holistic sort of side to things as well?
Absolutely.
Excellent. That sounds fantastic. And also on the show, we have William Hughes.
Hello.
How you going, William?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, Will's fine.
Will's fine.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now,
I answer to everything.
Okay, excellent. Now you're from a science background, so you started off doing a lot of science-based stuff, and that led you to a field called German New Medicine. German New Medicine?
Yeah.
Okay, how did you get into the science field?
Well, I was a kid with a lot of Lego.
Oh, and, as we do. Oh, I love
so,
Lego.
That led to space Lego and,
awesome.
and many other things. So
we can hang out now, I realise.
Cool. NCC 1701 mean anything to you?
Yeah, it does. That's at least the Lego rating that I want.
So I'm just I was naturally very curious as a child. I wanted to know how everything worked. And it led me down the science path, and my father was a pretty intelligent man, but more involved with finance and things like that. And I had a great mum, was very supportive, and I was the only child that sort of made it through from the family to go to university. And at that time, personal computing was really coming into vogue. So I took off to do a degree in computing up at Rockhampton's University up there.
Oh, I got a computer degree as well, and I don't think I ever got a job in the computer industry. It was a fantastic degree. Yeah.
So it wasn't, honestly, I got to say, like the computing side of it, same kind of experience. I mean, I learnt more before university in a lot of respects. But what I did is I had a really strong elective package that was chemistry, so inorganic, organic, analytical, instrumental.
Okay.
So that really gave me a good basis for science and understanding research, experimentation, things like that, recording results and looking at outcomes and setting up hypotheses.
Okay, wonderful. So can you tell us a bit about the German New Medicine? What's that? I haven't really heard much about it.
Okay. In essence, I hear a lot of people talk about the mind-body connection.
Okay.
People are aware that stress leads to disease in a lot of instances. I mean, how many times do you watch? I don't know, what is it they have now after the 7 o'clock news, or after the 6 o'clock news?
Oh, current affair.
Things like that.
That thing.
Yeah, and you'll hear someone, these neighbours moved in and they're terrible and now I'm sick. It's that we know intuitively in a lot of instances that stress leads to problems. We see evidence of it everywhere, but it seemed that no one realises that the studies have been done to actually find out what specific stress targets what specific organ. So we can see that a disease as it presents, we can actually identify now with 500 case studies, a minimum of 500 case studies behind each correlation.
So you're not beating around the bush. There's a lot of information and
40,000 case studies by 2005.
Okay, that's good.
When Dr. Carolina Marcolin compiled it into a research manual.
Okay.
So it's not mucking around. It's science. This is really science, and the beauty of it is a lot of science. They try to it's reductionist. Something wrong with your arm. Well, let's cut that off and have a look. That doesn't work. It's not a holistic approach. You have to treat the entity as a whole. And German New Medicine is a science that does that. It takes into account the psyche. And this is where you see, even in experiments that they do now in medicine, they don't look at the psychological effects of the trials.
Well, that's a lot of what I've seen in regards to science in general, like any form of science. And a guy went on YouTube and, not YouTube, he did a TED Talk about the delusion of science. And what he was putting forward was that, like, science doesn't take consciousness into effect in any experiment. Like, it doesn't put into any of its equations that consciousness is a part or helps by you observing that actual experiment, whether or not that experiment will work or not. And I think they did like experiments with some forms of fusion, and some of the experiments would only work if you thought it would work.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of implication. A lot of alchemy was based upon showing you how you interact with matter. So if you remember alchemy from back in the day, turning lead into gold, that sort of thing. And what they did with alchemy is they put through a scientific process where you could see how the elements were changing and transmuting into something else. But also there came an integral part when you had to use your mind upon these elements. And what they did within the experiments was they showed you that if you didn't think that this would transmute into something, it wouldn't do it. And they showed you how those elements were working with your mind to show you that connection of science with your mind, of matter with your mind. And with the new, I guess, like transition into a lot of new science, is that they just took that out. And that was like an integral part of alchemy. It was showing you how you are part of this matrix of matter, and how just you thinking about that matter will change it into what you need it to be in the formal process. And so I guess it's a lot of the similar sort of stuff where he's putting that element back in.
Well, yeah, I think just on what you said there, I mean, the words that spring to mind are, entanglement, intention, and bias. They're all just different views of the same process. So in a scientific experiment, you've got to be very careful that you don't bias the experiment somehow. So it's like the researcher can't really be entangled with the experiment. Entanglement being a quantum physics term. I would have to say, in the broader view of this, that Dr. Harmer allows for the entanglement. So he accepts that in treating someone, the man in the white coat actually has a huge role to play just by his intention and his state of being as he relates information to a client or a patient. And that's what we see. We know the placebo effect. We know about that. We know the nocebo effect. They've been well studied. You put two people in, I don't know, a room side by side where they can't see each other, and say one person speaks Spanish and one person speaks English, and it's made clear to them that the water supply you're giving them is good for a week, and then only in English is it explained that the water contains mercury or some toxin that the English speaker understands. What do you think is going to happen? Who's going to come out of those rooms at the end of the week in very poor shape? Someone who's stressing about what they're putting into their body, they're not going to, they're going to survive probably, but they're not going to be in great shape. They're going to be stressed for that week.
Wow, sounds fantastic. So we're going to have a great talk today, guys. And